What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. So this is now episode 33, and I'm your host, Robbie Cassidy. So today we're going to talk about returning to sport, and I just want to go through a couple of tips for people who will be getting back playing. The GAA is back next week. I know soccer rugby is going to be back very soon. So I just want to go through a couple of tips that people can use so they can reduce their risk of injury overall, and that we can get the best out of the season, because there's nothing worse than getting back into the season and then getting caught with like a small injury at the start, and that's keeping you back, and it just sets you back for the year. So this is going to be a short podcast, cover just a couple of quick points, and then hopefully it'll be good takeaways that you'll be able to implement in your own life and your own training style. Now, just before I jump into it, I want to talk a small bit about what I'm working with at the moment. So right now I'm doing my online consultations, so remote consultations. Basically, it's a physio consultation with a mobility bias to it, mobility and movement bias. But really what we go through is if you have a recurring injury that's going on a long time, or even if it's a new injury, and you want to get a second opinion on it, or you want to have a clear plan on what to do and where to go with it, and especially if you're getting back to sport, then this is for you. Because basically the consultation is we set it up through Zoom. We'll go through all your movement deficits. We'll have a look at everything just to make sure that everything's all right, and then we'll take a holistic approach and we'll look at your lifestyle as well as what may be contributing to that. And then I'll save you your videos, send you on your way, and then we do a checkup in 2 weeks, and we do a checkup then in 4 weeks after that. And then if you need anything else in the meantime, you can always get in contact with me. And then after that, I have my foundational mobility program that's out at the moment, and it's basically a program that works on the hips, back and shoulders, and it works to get them moving pain-free, get them moving properly, and really ties in breathing, strength, mobility, and movements. And it gives you a better idea of how to structure your own sessions. So the program itself is a 6-week program. It has graded or scaled exercises. So you have beginner and advanced, and it really works on freeing up those areas, because they're the ones that a lot of the time are tied together. So that's the hips, back, and shoulder. So if anyone's interested in that, check it out on my website. You can on mobilityshooter.com. Now, just to get right into the podcast, what I want to start with is I want to talk about some of the issues that people are having when they get back training. Now, there's only so much you can do when it comes to training, or when you're getting back into training, because obviously the manager is going to dictate a lot of what your recovery days are like, or what your recovery sessions are like, or even what you're training like. So you have to be able to take care of what you can yourself, and there has to be times over the season and even at the start where you might have to step out of a drill or step out of a thing so you can, for longevity purposes, so you can actually continue to play for the rest of the season, because you are no good to anybody when you're sitting on the sideline with an injury, and you're out with an injury. So it does, main thing in this is you have to take it into your own hands. You have to take the onus is on you a small bit in terms of keeping yourself healthy when it comes to injury prevention, especially at the start of the season, because it's the start of the season that catches people, because of the fact that you haven't done a whole lot of, let's say, high intensity play, high speed running in the weeks before. Maybe you have, and depending on, I know a lot of people haven't got access to their gym at the moment because gyms have been closed, obviously. So if you've been working out at home, that's good. If you haven't been working out at home and you haven't been doing that prehab work, well, then you're at a small bit more of a disadvantage in terms of the body has to catch up to the speed. Okay, and while it's catching up then is when you're at risk of injury. So most injuries occur when you do too much too fast after doing too little for too long. That's on a very basic way of explaining it, but that's kind of the way it happens. Like when we look at, and then we have to take into account, fatigue is a huge player with injuries. It's a massive component of any injury, or most injuries. And an easy one, a stat that I always throw out, is that you have 75% of all ACL tears are going to happen in the last 15 minutes of a match. And it's going to be the same with ankle sprains, that people are going to sprain their ankle, more than likely sprain their ankle after they do a bout of sprints, at a training session, or kind of towards the end of the training session. And like obviously there's freak accidents as well where you just roll it and that, but what we're trying to account for here is what we can work on. Now, when you look at that and you understand that fatigue is playing a role, why is it playing a role? Well, obviously the muscles themselves are going to be tired. They're not going to be as strong because they won't be able to contract as hard. And then looking beyond that, really looking at the neurological side of things, the nervous system itself can also get fatigued. And if the nervous system's fatigued, that's when you're in a bit more of a bother, because if the muscles are fatigued, at least the nervous system can take over and have other things that can compensate for it. If the nervous system is fatigued, then basically that's your driving center, that's your control center that's fatigued, and that's not running at full speed. So if it's not going to be running at full speed, then you're obviously at a bit more of a risk in terms of the fact that like the contractions might be coordinated wrong. You might have co-contractions, and then your reactions are obviously going to be affected. Your awareness is going to be affected as well. So it's nervous system fatigue that really makes a difference as well when it comes to injuries, because if the nervous system isn't able to, let's say, control your body in a certain position, or it's not able to react in time so that you can get out of a certain position, so that that you're not going to tear a ligament or tear a muscle, well, then you're going to be obviously at a higher risk. So that's why taking an overview and looking at it holistically and really like looking at your first, second and third week of training and seeing how you can kind of manage it or micromanage it is going to make a big difference. And what I mean by micromanaging it is really you need to look at your load in the first 2 weeks or first 3 weeks. So a lot of the time people get back training. It takes around about 2 days to recover after a match on average, depending on how much running you do in that match and sprinting. Okay, so after a training session, we'll say it's around about 2 days. If you've done a lot of high speed running, then it can be 3 days as well. So high speed running is obviously sprinting. It can extend up to 3 days after that. So what we're looking at is if you have a training on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then maybe a match on a Sunday because they're getting serious about getting back into it, well then at the end of the week you have a lot of the time you haven't recovered fully. So you might not even have recovered fully from the Monday session on Wednesday if it was a hard Monday session. And then you have to compound that because of the fact that on Friday then you're not recovered fully. And I should say it's 2 days recovery. It is what the research is showing. And if anyone wants to go into more detail on it, I have a podcast done with Larkin Daly. It's on number 25, I think. And we go into a lot more detail on structuring recovery protocols for GAA. But basically, if you have a good tolerance built up before this point, so if you have a lot of preseason gym and done, you have good relative strength in that you're able to lift a lot of weight compared to your body weight, and if you have a good engine built up already, then you recover within 2 days. But if you haven't that much done and you're kind of getting back into it, then the body doesn't recover as quick. And the reason being is when we look at it, an easy way to say it is if you have somebody who's able to bench press 100 kilo, that's their max bench press, and then you have another person who's able to bench press 60 kilo as their max, and you put both of those athletes under a bench that's 50 kg. So you put the 100 kilo guy, the guy that's able to lift 100 kilo under the 50 kg, and you put the guy that's able to lift 60 kilo under the 50 kg. Basically, what's going to happen there is the guy who's able to lift 100 kilo won't be as affected by that 50 kilo lift because he's more used to it. He has a higher tolerance to it, so he'll recover a lot faster than the guy who's able to lift 60 kilo. And the same rule applies for preseason training. If you have a lot of preseason training done, you'll recover faster in season. If you don't have a lot of preseason training done, you have a small bit of catching up to do and you'll recover a bit slower. So that's why load is really important, but actually having a look back at your preseason and seeing what you did back then, it's going to be also very, very important. And mistakes that a lot of people make when they're getting back into it is they do try to do too much within the first couple of weeks. And it's a habit in terms of and I know it myself, when you get into something and you go full steam ahead, you're delighted to be back, you're with all the lads again, you're kicking ball, or you're hurling or whatever, and you're delighted, and you want to get up to the speed that you were at championship when you finished last year, because you were obviously, let's say, you're at your highest step back then. And to do that, it's obviously going to take a few months to get there, and you have to play games, you need to get that sharpness back. But if you try to do too much in the first 2 weeks, you can really set yourself back by picking up a small injury or niggling injury, and it just outlasts what it should. So it's just continually staying on and on and on, as opposed to just picking it up and getting rid of it, or even avoiding it completely because you managed your load better. So you can't burn the candle from both ends is a analogy I always use. You can't be trying to do a whole lot in the first week, so you can't be trying to get all your gym sessions in, all your training sessions on the pitch in, and then even try to get extra, because I know a lot of guys do try to get an extra run in at the weekends and that, because you'll get away with it for 1 week and you might get away with it for 2 weeks, but by the time the third week rolls around, things will start breaking down, and that's what we really need to watch. So we're looking into the future, but we need to take a present. Like obviously you have to act in the present to reduce your load, but it's into the future that you're really saving yourself. So it's on that third week mark when the fatigue has really kicked in that you're that you won't be at as much of a risk. So burning the candle from both ends is basically training on a Monday, gymming on a Tuesday, training on a Wednesday, gymming hard on a Thursday, and then maybe gymming on a Friday and training on a Friday. Going out, maybe some people take Saturday off, some might go out kicking ball, and then on a Sunday, what people will do then is they'll train again, and they might get a run in the evening. And I notice from a lot of the clients that I'm working with, because they do this, it's obviously it's very common. I've done it myself. When you want to get into things, you want to get back to your same fitness, you just don't take everything into account, and you just power on full steam ahead. And it's really important to take that overview, especially as you get older. So when you're over 25, let's say 26, 27, you're going to adapt really fast, but you can still fatigue and you can still break down. So it's really, really important that you do actually schedule recovery days, and like full recovery days where you are not going out for a long run, you're not lifting in the gym, you're actually just planning a recovery day. So you might go through your mobility movement exercises to help relax down. You might go for a walk in nature, even like a light swim, not anything too stressful, just a nice swim to get out, or even just enjoying time with family and friends. And that in itself does actually improve your recovery. So, and if anyone's looking at recovery stuff, I've done a podcast on it before, recovery strategies or optimizing recovery, and I talk about turning that dial back so that you're able to bring your nervous system into a rest and digest or rest and recovery state, because it is a nervous system tone that you need to get into. Now, not taking recovery days is the big one that people will mess up on at the start. So it could be good to even include, like, double up on a gym session. If you could do an upper limb gym session on the day you're going to be on the pitch, if that works out for you, and then if that frees up another day later in the week that you get to recover, perfect. Then it's going to be important to do that. It's also important to work on your prehab stuff. If you are stuck for time in the week, work on your prehab stuff on the days that you are training as well. So like work on them after training, because that way you're working on them when you're fatigued. It's obviously going to take a lot more out of you, but at least you're giving yourself a full day recovery next day. Other things then that people mess up on a small bit would be not working on their mobility, movement stuff on their days off. And it's very easy to plan a recovery session when you know you're going to be training that evening, or even doing a few things after it. But it's not as easy to just take your day and go in and get a 15-minute mobility session that you can just move through, just get the joint moving, get the body moving, circulate that synovial fluid and improve circulation in general, and just let the body clear itself up. And nothing strenuous, just a nice easy session is always going to be good. So working on those during your week and spreading them throughout your week, it doesn't have to be too long. 15 or 20 minutes goes a long way in helping you recover, but it will in the long run help you out. Like, it really will in the long run keep you playing for a lot longer. And on top of that then, another one just of what I was talking about there, and people do coin it under the mobility side of things a lot, is a mistake that people make is they rely on foam rolling as a recovery tool. So they rely on that completely as a recovery tool. So just because they take 10 minutes after a session to roll out, they feel that they're good to go again. And I've talked about foam rolling a lot in the past, so I won't go into massive detail on this in this one, but really it's not going to have a huge effect on the muscle itself. It's not going to have really any known effect on the muscle itself, foam rolling. And massage guns are the same, and I had a question during the week about massage guns. How effective are they? But they are just a more like a popular version and less effort version of the foam roller. So it is very similar. But yeah, as of now, it doesn't break down adhesions. It doesn't do any of that. So people are relying on it probably too much instead of actually going through your movement stuff that will actually improve circulation and will help you recover a bit faster. And then the other mistake that people make is that they are doing probably too much sprint training, like heavy sprint training in the first couple of weeks, because that's really, really what takes it out of you. You can run 12K in a match and you'll be recovered in 2 days, 1 to 2 days. You won't have a whole lot of inflammatory markers. You won't have a whole lot of of muscle damage markers in your body after 2 days. But if you do a lot of high speed running, which is like sprinting, like interval running, even sprinting in a match, in a training match, anything like that, that really takes a toll on the body. And that really works on, that really takes a couple of more days to recover after that. So if you are doing a lot of sprint training, then you really need to focus on your recovery days that small bit more. Now, I know guys that are playing in the Premier League now, and the way they train is that they have their sessions spread out over the week. They take Wednesday off, and they have 2 gym sessions during the week. So they have, like, let's say a performance session, and then have a robustness session. The robustness session will be earlier in the week. The performance session will be later in the week. And it's just that's in-season training to keep them ticking over. They've obviously all their pre-season training done before that, so they're just topping up all the time when they're doing that. But it's a good way of doing it because first your body gets used to doing it. You already have your set recovery days, and you're not trying to get extra work in all the time while you're in season. So it's really important to manage your load very well in season. Now, how can we reduce risk overall? Well, basically what you want to do, as I said before, is you want to plan your recovery days. I keep saying it. It's going to be really important. It's going to play the biggest role in terms of reducing your risk overall, as it gives you time to recover after a session, and it gives you the body time to adapt. Because the body, obviously, stress is good for you in short bouts, but you need to give it time to adapt after, and that's what those recovery days do. And then on those recovery days, you need to focus in on your recovery strategies. Now, I've talked about recovery strategies a good bit in the podcast. I think it was around about 18 or 19. I talked in a bit more detail on recovery strategies. But I talked about optimized recovery, but then I talked about different actual strategies for recovery as well in another podcast. But focusing in on your recovery strategies is going to be really important. So that's like your active, your active recovery, your mobility and movement, your hydration, your sleep is going to be massively important. Sleep is probably, after load management, well, sleep is probably the main one, but load management is going to also help out with your sleep. So they work, vice versa, they work together. But focusing on doing that, another one I talked about was saunas and the use of saunas in recovery. So check out that podcast on saunas as well. There is actually benefit of it. I will be doing a podcast soon enough on ice and whether ice is actually an effective strategy. There is research showing out that it might actually slow your recovery as opposed to speeding it up. So we will just wait for that one to come out before we have any conclusive evidence on that. But I don't avoid ice and things too much anymore to people, because of the fact that it does slow that recovery process down just a small bit. And really, really important, simple one, is step out of training when necessary. So if you are feeling tight, if that hamstring is starting to lock up and you know that you're going to be playing a game or you're going to be going for sprints, something like that, you have to take it upon yourself to step out instead of just throwing yourself in it and hoping that everything will be all right and then tearing a hamstring and writing to me on Instagram and saying, well, I'm after tearing a hamstring, what do I do now? So actually taking the time or stepping out of a drill every once in a while and letting them know that the hamstring's at me, I don't want to be out for the next couple of weeks. Like any manager who's wants his team at the top or wants his team playing extremely well, obviously they might not, if you're stepping out of everything, they'll be like, right, this lad just doesn't want to sprint or this lady doesn't want to sprint. But if you do step out or if you are training and you do feel it locking up and you do feel like it's going to tear, there is no point training on it because it will either get worse or it'll tear, and there's nothing worse than that than setting yourself back. So moving from that specific example to actually working on prehab in season is going to be really important as well. So stepping out of training when necessary and then actually going through your prehab exercises in season as well is going to be huge. And planning them on, like if I was doing it now in season, I'd be planning them on days and I'm already like a high volume day. So like a day that I'm already doing a bit of work. So if I am training, if I'm going to the gym, that's when I'd be trying to do my prehab stuff. So I'd be leaving my recovery days as a recovery day completely. So work on your prehab stuff. You can do it after sessions if you need to, and I'll talk about it at the end, but I have tolerance programs coming out very soon, and basically they focus on, so they'll be out next week, the hamstring one will be, and they're basically focusing on building tolerance through the hamstring. I have one for the knee and ankle, and I have one for the shoulder, and they're exercises that you can do after training, or you can mix them in with your gym session as well. But I'll talk about that a small bit at the end. And then what else to reduce risk? Obviously, you need to focus on your sleep, your hydration. I discussed all that, but introducing and including more mobility sessions during the week, like 15-minute ones, even if you're just standing waiting for the kettle to boil, going through a couple of handy exercises is going to go a long way in helping you recover, right? And if you're watching a match on TV, there's nothing wrong with sitting down on the ground and going through a couple of stretches or a couple of movements. They're also going to help. And then, like, any time that you can think of it, just to get in a couple of movements. It doesn't mean you have to designate every day. You don't have to designate your 40 minutes or 30 minutes every day. If you can squeeze that into different times throughout the day, like when you're on the phone to somebody, you get a few exercises done, that will be beneficial as well, and you get a lot out of that. So including more mobility in your week is going to be a big one. And on top of this, the last 2 points then I have are become more aware of your body and monitor your fatigue levels. So becoming more aware of your body is going to be huge. It's going to be really, really important to build your awareness of how you're feeling, how you're sleeping, how you react to certain foods. All that is going to come into or take into account, and then actually becoming more aware of how your body moves can help you as well, because you can avoid a lot of ankle injuries, a lot of knee injuries by learning to fall properly, learning to know when you're gone too far in a movement and you actually have to just let yourself go. And that's a big thing. I can see that coming in the next couple of years, actually learning to fall a lot better, because when you are going over an ankle, you can get away with like a grade 1 injury, which grade 1 is like the lightest version of it. You can get away with that if you're aware and you're able to fall to the ground and you're able to collapse yourself at the right time. But if you go into the position that your ankle is twisting but you're not aware and you just drive through it, then you could have a grade 2, grade 3 injury and you're out for a couple of weeks to months. So becoming more aware of yourself when you are running, nothing wrong with letting yourself go if you feel like it's going to happen. So letting yourself fall to the ground, just to take the weight off it, to save that ligament, or even to save the muscle if it's like a hamstring that you're feeling is getting extremely tight. But on top of that, building that awareness of actually when you are fatigued as well. So apart from the body awareness itself, and actual mechanical awareness, but understanding when you are fatigued and when you won't be able to go 100%. And it might be after a couple of nights of really bad sleep and then high stress at work, or you've presentations and that due, and you might only be able to step into a couple of drills of training. But being actually aware of that and knowing about that and doing that when the time is right, and not being too easy. Like, you don't have to be very easy on yourself and pull out of every drill or every second drill, or anytime they're doing sprints you don't want to do it, so you're stepping out. That's a different mindset. My mindset I'm talking about is actually stepping out when it's the right time. Like when you feel like, okay, if I'm not going to gain anything from this, or what is the saying? The risk versus reward. The reward is not what the risk is worth. So like, or Jesus, you know exactly, you know what I mean. The risk isn't worth the reward. So if there's a chance that you're going to pull a hamstring by doing the sprints at the end, even though those sprints might only give you an extra like 3 or 4 minutes in the next game, if you do them in terms of like endurance, then it's not worth it, because you either get 3 or 4 minutes in the next game, or you miss 5 weeks or 6 weeks because of a hamstring injury. So becoming more aware of that as well, and when you do have to step out, is really important. And then lastly, monitoring fatigue levels is a really good one. So seeing what you're like in the morning when you wake up. Are you very groggy? Are you able to get up and you're a small bit more energetic? Seeing what you're like in the evening. Are you extremely tired in the evening? Do you feel like you're sleeping, or you need to nap throughout the day? That's a huge marker for recovery. Another nice one is checking your heart rate in the morning. If you know what your heart rate is on a normal day, you can see if you're still recovering if your heart rate is elevated the next morning. So if you're normal on a normal day, you're 60 beats per minute. You wake up on a Tuesday morning after a heavy session on Monday, and you see that your heart rate is up to 73 or 4, then you haven't recovered fully. And you'll know that. So heart rate is a simple way of testing recovery. And then hydration is a really important one. Looking at your urine colour is such a simple way of testing your hydration. Is it like a clear colour, slight tinge of yellow, or is it a dark yellow? And if it's a dark yellow, you're dehydrated. You want to find that happy balance in the middle there, that it's not like water, but there is a slight tinge of yellow in it as well. And then taking on a bit of salt as well with that. A lot of people are probably taking on enough salt, so I don't need to say that anyway. But if it does go like that, you probably need to take on a small bit more salt if it's crystal clear. But that, guys, is kind of everything I wanted to talk about today about actually getting back to training. So really, what you need to focus on is you need to watch your load a small bit more. Take note of it. You don't need to be doing sessions every day. You should be planning at least 2 recovery days a week. And this full recovery days, you need to be including more mobility and movements into your sessions. If you don't know where to start with that, then I would definitely recommend checking out my page on Instagram at the Mobility Tutor, and basically it'll go through. I have a lot of exercises there that you can take from. If you're looking for something a small bit more structured, then check out that foundational mobility program. It'll give you a better idea of how to structure your sessions. And then on top of that, we're also looking at working your prehab into your training days. That's going to be important, or into your gym days or your high volume days. That's going to be important for reducing your risk of injury overall. And keep an eye out for those tolerance programs that are out very, very soon. So that's that hamstring tolerance, and then it's going to be knee and ankle tolerance, and there's going to be a shoulder tolerance. And basically all they're working on is building, as it says in the name, more tolerance through those areas, so that you're able to handle higher load, and that you're not as at high risk of an injury because of that. So keep an eye out for those, and I'll be putting them out on Instagram very, very soon. On top of that then, last thing really is, I said focus on your recovery. So you're taking your recovery days, perfect, but you need to actually plan out your recovery a small bit more. So if it's going for a walk, if you are taking on more water, obviously you're looking at your diet, taking in your protein, other things that you can do to improve your recovery, be like, as I said, going for a swim, possibly sauna, stuff like that. So just be a bit smarter about it. Become a small bit more aware of how you are, because the first couple of weeks back, it's going to be high intensity. The body's going to be aching as you are getting back. So just becoming aware of how that is feeling on a day-to-day is going to really, really help you. And then learn to fall as well. So you can let yourself go. If the ankle is starting to twist, you just let yourself go. That'll help a lot. But yeah, guys, that's absolutely everything I wanted to chat about today. I hope that provided some value and that you were able to take something away from that and start to implement that in your own training, your own lifestyle. If you think that someone that would be interested in this podcast, I'd love if you could send this episode on to them, especially GA players. They're the ones, or guys who are injury prone, is really who need to listen to this, because a lot of the time they're injury prone because they're making the same consistent mistakes over and over again. So it'd be worth putting them onto this. On top of that, I would love if you could share this on your story on Instagram. It really gets the podcast name out there, and it helps me a massive amount. So if you found it useful, I'd love if you could share it on your story. And lastly, or even just send it to a friend, send it into a WhatsApp group. That helps a lot as well. Lastly, then, if you would subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Deezer, YouTube, whatever one you're listening to it on. And if you're on iTunes, I'd love if you could give it a rating and just leave a comment to let me know what you're thinking of it. If there's anything you'd like me to cover, do that as well. And as always, if you want to get in contact with me, just write to me on Instagram. I'm taking on more clients all the time now, and I have those programs available. I'm also doing those remote, or the consultations, injury consultations at the moment. So if you're interested in any of that, just send me a message. We can set up a call and discuss it and see what options are available for you. But yeah, guys, that's everything. Thanks a million for listening, and I will chat to you all again soon. So keep an eye out for those tolerance programs coming out very soon. Have a good one.